Alright, welcome back to a new series that I'm going to be starting covering the Six Flags Cedar Fair Merger Company. We're going to be going through all 27 parks from each of the chains, and we're going to go through a 5-year plan that I think is logical for their budget. Obviously, probably not going to happen. I'm going to try and base some of these predictions in reality, but for the most part, for most of these smaller parks, adding anything over the next 5 years is pretty much a fever dream. So I'm just going to be going over what I see for these parks, what fits their budget the best, and maybe they'll get some inspiration. Maybe they'll watch these videos and be like, "Hey, that's a good idea." But for the most part, I hope that they take some of these traditions at heart. But for the most part, they probably will just not add anything over the next 5 years. Not really much to say on that. I mean, it's pretty much Cedar Fair at that point, but with the Six Flags business model being merged with Cedar Fair's, I hope that they take on some of the Six Flags spread the wealth model and spread at least some of the wealth around, but really nothing to hope for. So Gilroy Gardens is the only park in the new super chain that I would be considered a family park. Not really going to have a lot of big coasters here. Not really going to have a giant B&M coaster just plopped down in the middle of the park. Not really going to happen here. It's more of a family park. As you can see, Gilroy Gardens was part of the Cedar Fair chain, but now is part of the gigantic Six Flags Corporation. Gilroy Gardens, as you can see, once again, it's just a family coaster. Has not a family coaster, a family park. A giant lake is actually in the middle of the park, as you can see from the park map here. Giant lake in the middle, a lot of space to work with. I mean, you could literally fit a Giga coaster if you wanted to, but there's literally no point. There's no reason to put a Giga coaster here. I'm not even gonna, because first of all, our budget is less than $1 million a year, so not gonna be putting anything here that's gonna be too top of the line. Alrighty, but looking at the park here, we have two coasters. We have the Figure 8 Timberline Twister, and then the awesomely themed Quicksilver Express, which is an aerodynamics mine train, because every single park that's old enough to be in the 1970s and beyond always had an aero mine train. Pretty much a must-have. So, now we're going to go through 2024 to 2028, and I'm going to be looking at the 5 rides that I think most likely are going to fit the park's budget and fit the theme of a family theme park. So in 2024, we have 3 Zamperla flat rides here because Zamperla has been working a lot with Cedar Fair and also Six Flags, so I think they're going to be filling up their smaller parks and doing the flat ride business with the main company. So we have the Happy Swing, Disco Coaster, and the Kite Flyer. I think the Disco is fun, but I have a better version of the Disco Coaster for the next year, 2025, when we add a coaster. So I'm going to just take the cheapest Zamperla flat ride on the list here, the Happy Swing. Pretty nice, pretty fun thing. It could be themed like an old bench that you used to ride with your family. Just swing for a couple cycles and then go back to the ground. Pretty relaxing thing to do with the family. As for 2025, like I said, $1 million budget. Not really going to be adding a lot of things here. Wild Mouse, I think the Wild Mouse would be a good idea, but it's too expensive. The cheapest Wild Mouse I can find was $1.5 million, so right out of our budget. But what's in our budget is a Zamperla Disc Coaster. It's basically a disco flat ride, but there's a hill in the middle and it spins a little bit faster. And yeah, you just ride back and forth, I think 4 times, and then back to the station. So I think it's a pretty cheap coaster for families, but I think it would fit. We put it right next to that giant lake in the middle of the park, and boom, you've got a themed family coaster. That's pretty good for the park. Puts the total number of coasters up to 3. And for 2026, I think the park is going to go with the Kite Flyer. I put the Sombrero, which is the Zamperla Scrambler clone, and then a Super Flumes ride. We'll be with Super Flumes ride. We'll get back to that in a minute because I think that's going to be a good ride to look at for the 50th anniversary. But for 2026, I'm going to go with the most cheap option on the list, the Kite Flyer, and it makes sense. There's a lot of picnic areas in the park, so just plop this down next to a picnic area, eat with the family, and then go on a nice kite ride, because there's nothing more traditional than a picnic and then flying some kites. So in 2027, we're going to be adding a record-breaking coaster to celebrate the park's 50th year anniversary in 1977. Did I say coaster? No, I meant to say flat ride, because this park is Gilroy Gardens, and Gilroy Gardens does not add giant giga coasters for its 50-year anniversary. It adds flat rides, and I think the best flat ride on the list is to splurge for the most expensive one, and not only do the most expensive one, which is the dual log flume, the Super Flumes ride by Zamperla, but I think for that 50th anniversary, we go big or go home. It's the 50th anniversary in 2027. 1977 to 2027, 50 years. I think they go for the most log flumes that duel each other. Not with just 2 layers, but 3 layers. And I think the 3 layers, you make that 3rd layer super high, and you go kiddie layers on the bottom, family layers on the is the medium, and then up top is the thrill level. So fun for the whole family. Teenagers go on the thrill level, families go on the medium level, and kids go on the small level. And I think that'll be a great fit. Alright, so in 2028, I think we're going to get under their small family coaster. Wild Mouse again, out of the budget. Sea Serpent Ride is the cheapest family coaster I could find. It's the cheapest coaster by Ian F. Myler. Barely any money goes into these things, but I think for a good themed ride, I'm going to go with a single rail flyer. We can just place it near a bunch of trees, make kids zoom around, not rough, not painful. They can just fly around and conquer their fear of heights and go on a little flying adventure. So, that is basically our 5-year plan at Gilroy Gardens. Happy Swing, Disc Coaster, Kite Flyer, Super Flumes, Single Rail Flyer. And some possible names for these rides. Happy Swing changes the Tree Swing. Of course, it's like a jungle version. Disco Coaster, Jungle Raft, place it next to the giant lake in the middle. Make the spinny platform look like a raft. Fun, make it fun for the kids. Kite Flyer, flying kites, just playing to the kites theme. For that record-breaking giant flume ride, I think Gilroy Falls, use the namesake of the park, and get a giant flume ride that the park can look at and say, this is our icon. This is the icon of our park. And then Single Rail Flyer, Tree Flyers, pretty basic name, but fits for the ride. As for where to put these, I've made the map bigger, and I think there's some pretty logical places for each of them. Obviously the tree swing, just place it near the train station. As soon as you walk in the park through the entrance, you go right to the carousel, and then right behind it is the tree swing. For the jungle raft, place it right next to the giant freaking lake in the middle of the park. Of course, just place it on that little coast back there. Paint it blue, have a little raft themed for the spinny platform, and you got a pretty good themed water coaster. For flying kites, there's a picnic area right next to it. Just plop it down right next to the picnic area, and families can eat while other families fly kites. For Gilroy Falls, this is a pretty easy one as well. The park has a gigantic waterfall in the back of the park, so what's better than a gigantic waterfall? Well, a giant super flume ride right next to the gigantic waterfall. So not only is the water ride that's themed to waterfalls, the record-breaking ride of the park that the park needs as an icon, we'll just put it right next to the giant freaking waterfall. Themed, works, bada bing, bada boom. And for the tree flyers, we're just going to put it on the left-hand side with the giant forest. It's going to fly through the trees, interact with the train, the pavilions, some of the buildings, and Timberline Twister. And kids will just fly around while their parents watch in awe at what their kids can do while flying in the air. Alright, that's pretty much it for Gilroy Gardens' 5-year expansion. Possible things beyond 2028. Possible expansion of the park, make it bigger, add new interactive exhibits and areas, new flat rides, maybe a cheap family coaster in the future, but honestly, I don't really know what's going to happen in 5 years. Will we make it to 5 years? I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Like if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you like it. I'll see you guys next time. Toodaloo!